Welcome, you curious learners, to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling a really big one, a topic that's caused a lot of confusion and debate: obesity and weight loss. For decades, we've heard this mantra, right? Eat less, move more. Simple. But what if that advice, which sounds so reasonable, is actually, well, fundamentally flawed? What if it's been leading us down the wrong path?
That's a huge question because, despite so many people trying to follow that exact advice, we've seen this unprecedented rise in obesity globally, really kicking off around the 1970s. So in this deep dive, we're going into source material that offers some, frankly, surprising answers. Answers that really challenge what most of us think about weight.
Yeah, our mission today is to cut through all that noise, look at the evidence presented in the sources, and figure out what's really going on with weight gain. And crucially, what actually works according to these insights. We're going to really focus on reiterating some key ideas that might just flip your understanding of metabolism upside down. Okay, so let's start with that bedrock idea. Obesity is just about calories. Too many in, not enough out. Simple imbalance. But here's where the source material throws a curveball right away. It points out this kind of awkward irony. If doctors are the experts on the human body, why do some doctors struggle with their weight too? It kind of suggests that maybe, just maybe, the standard advice isn't the whole story.
It's a powerful point, isn't it? Makes you think. And the source digs into why, distinguishing between what it calls proximate and ultimate causes. So calories in versus calories out, that's the proximate cause, the immediate thing we see. But the ultimate cause, the reason why the calories are imbalanced, often gets blamed on personal failings or lack of willpower. The source argues that's a huge misdirection. It keeps us from seeing the real biological drivers.
And this isn't even a new idea, apparently. The book points back to the mid-1800s. Figures like William Banting, who treated obesity successfully. How? Not by counting calories, but by avoiding specific foods, what he called fattening carbohydrates.
Exactly. But then you see the shift. By the 1950s, there was this growing concern about heart disease. Now, the source knows this was partly statistical people living longer, better diagnosis, but the narrative became dietary fat is the enemy.
Ah, the low-fat craze.
The low-fat craze, precisely. And the proposed solution was low-fat diets. But the unintended consequence, people started eating way more refined carbs and sugar to replace the fat.
So connecting the dots, what happened then?
Well, the source highlights this really striking correlation. Obesity rates in the U.S. start climbing dramatically, starting almost exactly in 1977.
1977, what's significant about that year?
That's the very year the official U.S. dietary guidelines came out recommending low-fat, high-carb diets.
Wow. Coincidence?
The source argues pretty strongly that it's not a coincidence at all. And you see more evidence when you look at studies on calorie cutting alone. It generally fails long-term. Think about the old Minnesota starvation experiment.
Right. I've heard of that.
Yeah, these men were on semi-starvation diets, but they lost way less weight than expected. Why? Their bodies hit the brakes, slow down their metabolism, their energy expenditure.
Your body fights back.
It fights back hard. And then there's the big one, the Women's Health Initiative Dietary Modification Trial. The source calls it the biggest, baddest, most kick-ass study of the whole eat less, move more approach. Huge study, long duration.
Okay, the definitive test. And the result.
After 7.5 years, basically no significant difference in weight loss between the low-fat group and the control group.
No difference.
None. And get this, the waist circumference for the eat less, move more group actually increased a bit.
Increased? You're kidding.
Nope. The source calls it a resounding repudiation of that strategy. A cruel hoax, even. Because when it fails, who gets blamed?
The person trying the diet, not the advice itself.
Exactly. And this failure wasn't just diets. It includes those early calorie-blocking drugs like orlistat and Olestra. They didn't really move the needle either.
Okay, so the eat less part seems flawed. What about the other half? Move more. Exercise has to be key, right?
Well, that's what we all think. But the source presents this stark reality. Physical activity has increased globally, and in the U.S. specifically, yet obesity rates still climbing relentlessly.
So more movement hasn't meant less obesity overall. Why not?
It boils down to where our energy actually goes. The source explains that exercise is a surprisingly small part of our total daily energy expenditure, like maybe 5%, sometimes a bit more. The vast majority, around 95%, goes to our basal metabolic rate. That's just, keeping the lights on, breathing, body heat, organs running.
So that 45-minute walk I take.
Burns maybe less than 5% of your total daily calories if you're an average guy. It's not nothing, but it's not the main event for energy output.
Huh. And then there's this compensation idea you mentioned
Yeah,
earlier.
this is fascinating. When you exercise hard, your body often compensates. Two main ways. First, you get hungry. You work up an appetite.
Yep, definitely experienced that.
And second, you might subtly move less the rest of the day without even realizing it. Your body conserves energy elsewhere. The source cites studies where kids actually ate about 300 extra calories for every extra hour of exercise they did.
So the body tries to balance the books.
It's incredibly efficient at it, which leads to that analogy the source uses. Diet is Batman and exercise is Robin.
Huh. Okay, I like that.
Yeah, exercise is great, loads of health benefits, heart, mood, strength. But for weight loss specifically, it's the sidekick, not the hero. Diet's the main lever. More exercise alone doesn't seem to solve the obesity problem.
Okay, so if it's not just calories and exercise isn't the primary driver, what is the core issue, according to the source?
The argument is that obesity is fundamentally a hormonal disorder, not simply an energy balance one. It introduces this idea of the body set weight.
Like a thermostat for your weight.
Exactly like a thermostat. Your body has a weight range it likes, and it will fight hormonally to stay there. It defends that set weight.
And which hormone is central to this?
Insulin. The evidence presented points overwhelmingly to insulin as the key regulator of fat storage. Look at studies on people with diabetes. When patients type 1 or type 2 are given more insulin, what happens?
They gain weight.
They gain weight consistently. And the source stresses this isn't about them suddenly becoming lazy or losing willpower. It's the physiological effect of the insulin itself telling the body to store fat.
There was that big trial, right? The diabetes control.
Yes, the Diabetes Control and Complications Trial. Landmark study. Type 1 diabetics on higher insulin doses gained almost 10 pounds more than the control group over about 6 years. Same effort, same willpower, different insulin levels, different weight outcomes.
So it really underscores that insulin is doing something direct here.
It strongly suggests it, which leads to the flip side of the question. If more insulin causes weight gain, does less insulin cause weight loss?
Logically, it should.
And the source says yes. It points to drug classes that lower insulin, things like alpha-glucosidase inhibitors or SGLT2 inhibitors. What do they consistently do?
Cause weight loss.
Cause weight loss. And the most dramatic, though tragic, example is untreated type 1 diabetes. Insulin levels are extremely low. What happens?
Severe weight loss, wasting away.
Right. The body is essentially unable to store fat or use glucose properly, so it starts breaking down everything else. It shows just how critical insulin is for managing energy storage.
So the source makes this pretty bold claim then.
Yeah, it claims that something like 75% of the weight loss response in obesity can be predicted by insulin levels. Not willpower, not even precise calorie counting, not exercise. Insulin sensitivity and levels are paramount.
Okay, if insulin is the main player, the conductor of the fat orchestra, what makes it go haywire? What drives insulin levels up and causes resistance?
Number 1 on the list, sugar, especially fructose.
Ah, fructose, not just any sugar.
Right. Now, those 1977 guidelines did mention limiting sugar, but the intense focus on cutting fat sort of overshadowed it. So sugar consumption actually went up from 1977 through about 2000.
Just as obesity was rising.
Exactly, paralleling it.
Yeah.
And the issue with fructose, the source explains, is that it's primarily metabolized by the liver. Too much fructose floods the liver, and it gets converted directly into fat in the liver.
Fatty liver.
Leads to fatty liver, which is a major driver of insulin resistance. That's when your cells stop responding properly to insulin, so your pancreas pumps out even more, creating a vicious cycle.
Is there direct evidence for this fructose effect?
Oh, yeah. Studies where healthy people were given about 1,000 extra calories just from fructose daily. In only 7 days, their insulin sensitivity got 25% worse.
Wow, that fast.
That fast. And regular table sugar, sucrose, is half glucose, half fructose. So the source calls it twice as bad. The glucose directly spikes insulin, and the fructose drives the resistance.
Okay, so sugar, especially fructose, is a big one. What else?
Refined grains. Think about modern wheat. Even whole wheat bread is often made from flour that's been processed into very fine particles.
So digest really quickly.
Super quickly. It hits your bloodstream fast, causing a big insulin spike, much like sugar does. The source argues that a lot of the problem with Western foods isn't just the ingredients, but the processing removing fiber and other protective elements.
Fiber is key then.
Fiber seems to act as a sort of natural brake on digestion and insulin release. And this ties into another factor. Eating frequency. How often we eat.
We definitely snack more now than people used to.
Way more. Back in the 60s, it was mostly 3 meals a day. Now, it's often 6 or more eating occasions. Constant grazing.
And the problem with that is?
Constantly eating means insulin levels are persistently high. Your body never really gets a break and never fully switches over to fat-burning mode because insulin is always telling it to store energy. This constant stimulation is thought to be a major driver of insulin resistance over time.
So those healthy snacks might not be so healthy in this context.
The source calls the healthy snack idea one of the greatest weight loss deceptions. And even breakfast, we're told, it's the most important meal. But the source suggests if you're not actually hungry, forcing yourself to eat might just be another unnecessary insulin spike.
Challenging some ingrained habits there. Okay, what else influences insulin?
Stress and sleep, big ones. Cortisol, the main stress hormone, directly tells your body to release glucose into the blood.
Which then raises insulin.
Exactly. Think about Cushing's syndrome, a condition of excessive cortisol. What's a major symptom?
Weight gain, often significant.
Right, regardless of diet or exercise. So chronic, everyday stress. It contributes physiologically, and sleep deprivation does too. It messes with insulin sensitivity and also boosts cortisol. They're not just lifestyle factors. They have direct hormonal consequences.
Okay, so putting it all together. If obesity is fundamentally hormonal, driven by insulin, the solution has to target insulin, right?
That's the core argument. The path forward proposed by the source involves strategies specifically designed to lower and stabilize insulin levels. And this brings us back to reiterating those key mechanisms.
So, first step.
First, focus on what to eat. The primary recommendation is to eliminate added sugars. You have to become a bit of a detective reading labels because sugar hides under many names.
And artificial sweeteners.
Avoid them too, the source advises. They might not have calories, but they can still trigger an insulin response in some people.
So what should we eat?
Focus on whole, unprocessed foods. Lots of vegetables, fruits, whole fruits, not juice, nuts, seeds, healthy fats, quality proteins like meat and fish. These foods naturally contain fiber and fats that slow digestion and moderate insulin.
And you mentioned fiber being important.
Crucial. The source calls fiber an antidote to carbohydrates. It slows down how quickly sugars are absorbed, preventing those sharp insulin spikes, and it helps you feel full.
Any other dietary tricks?
Vinegar. Interestingly, the source points to studies showing that consuming a bit of vinegar, maybe with meals, can help blunt the insulin response to carbohydrates. A simple traditional food with a modern benefit.
Okay, so what we eat is key for managing insulin. But there was another part.
Yes, maybe even more powerful, according to the source, when to eat, or perhaps more accurately, when not to eat. This means incorporating periods of fasting.
Okay, fasting. That word can sound scary. We need to be clear here.
Absolutely. This isn't starvation, which is involuntary and harmful. Fasting in this context is the voluntary, planned abstinence from food for specific periods.
And the goal is?
To give your body a break from constantly processing food, to allow insulin levels to drop significantly, really down to baseline. When insulin is low, your body naturally switches its fuel source. It stops running primarily on glucose and starts burning stored body fat.
So it flips the metabolic switch?
Exactly. And here's a really key difference from just cutting calories. During fasting, the source explains, your metabolic rate doesn't necessarily drop. In fact, it can increase slightly due to a rise in hormones like adrenaline.
So unlike calorie restriction, which can slow metabolism,
fasting appears to maintain or even boost it, at least initially. Plus, growth hormone levels tend to rise during fasting, which helps preserve muscle mass. It's a very different physiological state than chronic low-calorie dieting.
what kind of fasting are we talking about? Does it have to be extreme?
Not necessarily. The source discusses various approaches, maybe doing a 24-hour or 36-hour fast, say, 2 or 3 times a week. Or a more common approach now is daily intermittent fasting, like a 16.8 schedule.
Where you fast for 16 hours and eat within an 8-hour window.
Exactly. Often just means skipping breakfast and having your first meal at lunch, then finishing dinner by a certain time in the evening. The key, regardless of the schedule, is to avoid snacking during your eating window on non-fast days too. Keep those insulin levels low between meals.
So consistency matters.
Consistency seems crucial for breaking the cycle of high insulin and resistance. And finally, circling back, the source reiterates that managing stress and getting enough sleep are also vital parts of the puzzle. Practices like mindfulness or meditation can help lower cortisol. Good sleep hygiene supports better insulin sensitivity. It's all interconnected hormonally.
So wrapping this all up, what's the big takeaway for you listening? That old refrain, eat less, move more. If it hasn't worked for you, it's likely not a personal failing. The source material we've explored paints it as potentially a cruel hoax. This deep dive suggests obesity is more accurately understood as a hormonal issue, a dysregulation of how our bodies store fat, with insulin sitting right at the center of it all.
Right. And the crucial idea to really hold on to, the point to reiterate, is this. The solution proposed isn't about endless calorie math or punishing workouts. It's about understanding your body's insulin response and taking steps to manage it. That means focusing intently on what you eat, real whole foods, ditching the added sugars and refined carbs, and maybe just as importantly, when you eat, using periods of fasting to allow your insulin levels to fall and your body to access stored fat.
It's a different way of thinking about weight, offering perhaps a more effective and sustainable approach, a new framework that offers real hope. So the question we leave you with today is, what aspect of this hormonal perspective, this insulin-centric view of weight, will you explore first on your own journey to understanding your health?
Stay curious, keep questioning, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.